Hello, my friends. I'm Dennis Prager, and I'm about to speak to someone that I only speak to when the world is a mess. It's very sad. I should actually, on a number of occasions, privately, I've spoken to him when the world is less of a mess, but on the air, it's always because something terrible is happening. Michael Ledeen, one of the foremost scholars of Iran and, for that matter, Italy. In fact, if the country begins with an I, he has a great deal of expertise in that arena. He is a freedom scholar at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. He has a column that was just written, published in Forbes. The Grand Bargain is a Gift to Iran. Michael Ledeen, good to have you on the Dennis Prager Show.
Hi, Dennis. Happy Monday.
You sound deliriously happy.
Well,
that was about as low, depressed, happy Monday as I've ever received.
Well, I'm halfway through it, and it's very hot here, and so far, so good.
All right. Well, first of all, before we get to your piece, I'm sure you are aware that the United Nations Security Council has just voted 15-0, in other words, unanimously, to remove all UN sanctions from Iran. A few questions on that, if I may. One is, what's the difference between UN sanctions and all other sanctions?
UN sanctions are supposed to be binding on all UN members, whereas American sanctions only apply to Americans, and EU sanctions apply to EU and so forth.
So in that case, so it really, if that's what it means, then there's no effect on the United States and the European countries' sanctions. This is an effect perhaps on Uruguay's sanctions, but not ours.
No. The UN passed over the last decade all manner of sanctions on Iran, having to do with nuclear questions, having to do with failure to observe nuclear requirements. So remember, IAEA.
Yes.
That's part of the UN.
Right.
And so when the Iranians stiff inspectors from IAEA,
which they have repeatedly.
Yeah, the UN gets annoyed and so forth. So they've applied all manner of sanctions over the years, including sanctions on weapons trade. So one of the many embargoes on weapons trade with Iran comes from the UN.
Right. So I'm just not clear. I know it's my fault, but I suspect a lot of listeners share my non-clarity. What's the difference between a UN sanction and an American sanction? Give me an example. Is it a product? Is it a weapon? What is it?
Well, sometimes it's weapons. Sometimes it's access to international banking. And so forth. So you have to lift all these various things.
All right. What's left then? If the UN lifts sanctions, 15-0 voted on by the United States and the European countries, Russia and China. So what's left that's sanctioned?
What's left is things that we have sanctioned, and individuals that we have sanctioned, and corporations that we have
Which
sanctioned.
is the more devastating to Iran, UN sanctions or U.S. and European sanctions?
I think the most devastating sanctions to Iran are the U.S. sanctions because they've hit their access to international financial markets, which is very painful to them. Weapons and so forth is stuff they've been able to get anyhow, because there are so many countries that don't observe these sanctions, like Russia, India, China, and so forth.
North Korea.
Yes, there is North Korea, It's funny how often we forget North Korea, but it's terribly important.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, good. So, this is why, now getting to your column, this is why the U.S. vote is so important, because the most devastating sanctions are the American sanctions.
The U.S. vote is very important, and so is the Iranian vote, by the way. Let me point out to you that the Iranians have not approved this yet. And the Supreme Leader, Khamenei, gave a speech on Friday, or maybe Saturday, but anyway, Friday or Saturday, in which he repeatedly, more than a dozen times, said, we're going to hate America and we're going to continue acting the way we've been acting, whether or not this agreement is approved. And today, the head of the Revolutionary Guards came out and said that they were not going to. The Revolutionary Guards were opposed to parts of this agreement and were opposed to parts of what the UN were doing. So it's wide open. The whole thing is wide open. I keep reminding people, hopelessly, because nobody pays attention, that Khamenei does not want a deal. He wants money, and the parts of this deal that give him money he loves. But he's not eager to sign an agreement with the great Satan, with us, not at all. And he's gone out of his way for the last many weeks to say over and over again, death to America, death to Israel, we hate the Americans, we're not going to change, and he's not going to change. And so all the talk that goes on here about how when we ease sanctions and we move into some kind of better relationship with Iran, maybe the Iranian government will moderate, maybe it's...
Join the community of nations. That's my favorite phrase.
Yes. Or the international community, another fiction. That just doesn't... There is no reason on earth to think that they're going to change, and every reason to believe that they've got 35 years of this behavior.
And now they'll be enriched by $100 billion. Why would they change? It's an absurdity. But I want to ask a different question. If Khamenei is not happy with the deal, doesn't that argue on behalf of the deal?
No, he's opposed to any deal.
In principle.
Yeah, he's principled. He doesn't want to make a deal with the devil.
Even if it's good for him.
Well, he's getting everything he wants without making a deal. That's the point.
No, wait. No, he's getting everything he wants, which is money, with this deal. He's not getting all this money without the deal.
Yeah, he is. He's getting, at the moment, he's getting $700 million a month from us. And there's no agreement. There's no deal.
Why is he getting $700 million a month from us?
Because it's a goodwill gesture by us. We're on blocked Iranian funds, and we agreed to do that back in April. It's what do they call it in diplomacy? It's a confidence builder. No, what he's gotten. There's too much focus on jots and tittles in all of these documents. What he's gotten from us is an Obama administration that basically is carrying out Iranian policy. So we carry out Iranian policy in Syria. We are now supporting Assad. Our air attacks are aimed, along with Assad's, primarily at threats to Assad. And our attacks on ISIS or ISIL or IS, whatever you want to call it, are very meager. And we are supporting Iranian action on the ground in Iraq. And we're functioning on occasion as the Iranian Air Force in Iraq and Syria. And it's just ghastly. That's the serious thing. So Khamenei knows that he has an American president and an American administration that will do what he wants and will give him everything he asks for. And he does.
All right. Whoops. Well, anyways, we got to take a break. It was an accidental break there. All right. If you want to ask Michael Ledeen any questions, I certainly have more. But this is there are few scholars of Iran who are as clear-eyed as he is. 1-8-Prager-776. This is the Dennis Prager Show. Last year we had 27 million views, and this year we're on pace to go over 40 million views. My guest is Michael Ledeen, Freedom Scholar at the Foundation for Defense of Democracy. He's one of the experts in this country and in the Western world about Iran. But he's an expert who actually has a clear understanding. It's easy to be an expert without understanding. He's an expert with understanding. I want to commend you and for raising the issue of Barack Obama deciding unilaterally to give Iran $700 million. Was it $700 million? Yeah,
a month.
This is since last November, or the decision was November. It's, as you said, it began in April. I want. Why was that not more widely reported?
Well, I don't know. It's not hard to find.
No, it's not hard to find if you look, but it's not raised. It was not. Why didn't Republicans go ballistic?
Because Republicans have been terrible on this question. Look, the central question in all of this is, what should American policy toward Iran be? We haven't had a good Iran policy ever since Jimmy Carter. Every president since Jimmy Carter has failed. Every president has tried to make a deal with Iran, and they've all failed. Even George W. Bush tried to make.
Well, you're also including Ronald Reagan.
Well, of course, Ronald Reagan sold weapons to Iran, even, and gave Iran intelligence during the Iran-Iraq War. Big deal. And then got upset by that and gave Iraq intelligence on Iran, so we sort of tried to balance it off. But I've written about that extensively. I wrote a book about Iran-Contra that goes into that in detail. Yes, absolutely, including Reagan. Every president at a certain point became convinced that you could make a deal with Iran. The only difference between all those presidents and Barack Obama is that Obama didn't need to be convinced. He came already convinced. And already during the presidential campaign of 2008, he sent an emissary, retired Ambassador Bill Wilson, to Tehran to talk to the Iranians and say things were now going to be different. And Obama wanted to be their friend, and he's pursued that avidly ever since, and he just won't take no for an answer. And he keeps giving them things, doing things for them, and refuses to do anything that might annoy them. Ergo, don't bomb Syria. Ergo, don't do anything that might threaten Assad. Ergo, be anti-Israeli and pro-radical Arab and so forth. That's Obama. And the mystery, for me anyway, is why is he so passionate about this? Why does he care so much about strategic alliance with Iran, which is what he is about and has been about all along? And I don't get it, Dennis. I use two metaphors. He's either a battered wife, so he keeps on saying, no, he loves me really. Doesn't matter how many Americans the Iranians kill, doesn't matter how many hostages the Iranians take. Obama plugs on, saying it'll all work out fine. So he's either a battered wife or he's a besotted teenager who's so in love that he just won't take no for an answer and keeps on looking for ways to make it happen.
Does he have a special love, so to speak, for Iran, or is it simply one of the most important Muslim countries and he has a particular affinity for the Islamic world?
No, I think that his dream is to do his version of Nixon to China. I think he wants to fly to Tehran, get off the plane, walk across a red carpet, and embrace the supreme leader. That's what he has in mind. He thinks Iran is special. Don't know why. I can't figure it out.
Who is the natural leader of the Islamic Middle East, Iran or Egypt? I know Egypt is Sunni and most of the Middle East is Sunni. Nevertheless, Iran sees itself, of course, as the Great Persia.
Iran sees itself, and Khamenei sees himself as the leader of the whole Muslim world. There's also Turkey in there. Erdogan would say to you that Turkey is the natural leader.
Right, which is the Ottoman Empire.
And he's the natural caliph.
So there are three competitors for the title of great Muslim leader: Egypt, Turkey, and Iran.
Yes.
That's another factor here, isn't it? Where is Turkey vis-a-vis Iran?
Back and forth. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, pro-Iran, doing deals with Iran, helping Iran beat sanctions, all these various scandals involving gold from Turkey to Iran. That greatly helped the Iranians. They have a duty-free trade agreement. Their currencies are interchangeable and so forth. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, he's anti-Iran, because Iran is pro-Assad and Turkey, at least nominally, is anti-Assad.
Why wouldn't it be naturally anti-Iran, given that Iran is Shiite?
Because the Sunni-Shia thing is greatly overstated. The real metaphor there is the Godfather. So under normal circumstances, the various mafia families compete with one another and fight one another and even kill one another. But when the feds come
you're
after
so
them,
right.
Yeah.
Because after all, they're now the latest reports are that Iran is helping Al-Qaeda, which is blowing up Shiites.
Well, Iran has helped Al-Qaeda all along. Zarqawi, who was the ultimate Sunni radical and the founding father of Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and then of ISIS, he operated out of Iran for years, and then finally moved to Iraq.
All right. Other than disappointment with Republicans, I have to go back to this because I'm somewhat reeling. It's sort of like you mentioned something in passing, and it's like a punch that you get that you only feel later. Wow, that guy has a really powerful left-hand jab. I want to understand something. And obviously the music tells me you'll have to tell me when we come back. But you said, the Republicans have been awful the whole time on Iran. Still, $700 million a month before even any deal is signed, $700 million a month.
Yes.
To the supreme leader. You have to explain why that was not shouted, at least, about. That's why I speak to Michael Ledeen. The clarity is unparalleled on the matters that he speaks on. We'll be back in a moment. You're listening to the Dennis Prager Show. Dennis Prager here. Michael Ledeen, not Levine, Ledeen, L-E-D as in Dennis, double-E-N, Freedom Scholar at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. So before I go on, I just want to thank you before I go on with you, I want to thank you by way of at least recommending one or two of your books. What would you like my listeners to know about?
Well, the one I'm happiest about concerning the war is called Accomplice to Evil, Iran and the War Against the West. And if people are interested in Italy, I have a book on Naples called Virgil's Golden Egg and Other Neapolitan Miracles, which is really a fun book, and Naples is really a fascinating place.
Terrific. So, I'm returning to this $700 million a month gift by President Obama to Iran, begun in April, verified or organized or decided upon last November. Okay, so look, my listeners know how open I am. I didn't know about this, and I feel stupid because it's my job to know about this. So I asked around here, and everybody else didn't know about it either, and I have some pretty bright people surrounding me. Why how did this happen?
It was part of the joint agreement that was agreed to in Lausanne that nobody signed either, and already back at that time, Khamenei came out and said this isn't binding on anybody. Nobody has signed it. You got to watch that signing business. It's important. Then
I return to the issue. Why? Come on. It's not enough to say Republicans are not competent or whatever you want to say. Why did no Republican stand up? I mean, Lindsey Graham is a very smart man. Well, I don't care what people think about his domestic policies and so on. He's an intelligent man. Why didn't he say anything?
Well, he should have. And he said it's not enough to say something. You have to keep saying it. And the one who's been best on this sort of stuff so far has been Cruz, and with Rubio in second place. They've talked about it. They've denounced it. But Republicans are horrifically led, Dennis. McConnell and Boehner are really awful. And they don't want to get into a fight with Obama about this sort of thing. And look at the resolution that came out. I mean, I'm dying to see how this vote now turns out. Will they really have the courage to stand up and say no after Obama made this bad deal and then went right around them and went straight to the UN before Congress had a chance to act, undermining American sovereignty, cutting them out of any meaningful role when already Corker and Cardin had passed a bill that, in effect, cut them out of it anyway.
What do you answer? I am profoundly opposed to this, the worst deal in American diplomatic history, in my opinion. What is your answer to those who say the sanctions were collapsing anyway? Witness this vote, so it won't help, because America will be left holding the bag and just lose financially.
Well, we undermined, it's our doing. We undermined sanctions in Lausanne. And if we were serious about Iran policy, we'd be going after the regime, because the only serious Iran policy is to fight back. They've been waging war against us for 35 years. They've been killing Americans all over the place.
It's a war that only one side is fighting. That's exactly it. We'll return with Michael Ledeen and your calls, 1-8-PRAGER 776-877-243-7776. It drives me crazy when there is a war and only the bad guys fight. It drives me crazy. We'll be back in a moment with Michael Ledeen. I'm Dennis Prager. We are living through a momentous moment, if you can say that. And it's not redundant, but it's not really redundant. There are non-momentous moments. My column that comes out tomorrow is actually on this subject. The parallels between now and 1938 are so precise that it's actually eerie. But I'll talk about that another time. I'm speaking with Michael Ledeen now, who brought to my attention, nobody here, not one of us, was aware of this, and I feel actually a little embarrassed by, that President Obama just unilaterally decided to release $700 million a month in March or April to Iran, I'm looking at a piece from March 15th, March 6th, in U.S. News, U.S. News, by Mortimer Zuckerman. In the middle of the piece, in the middle of a paragraph, in the middle of a sentence, there's one reference. Remarkably, Obama retreated even further in agreeing Iran could have $700 million a month in revenues, reportedly allowing Iran to retain one form or another its facilities in Natanz, etc., Fordo and Iraq. I sit in awe at the president's chutzpah, and I assume again Michael Ledeen of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies that his belief was this will soften their stance on negotiations. Do you think that was the point?
He's desperate. He's been desperate since 2008 for a strategic alliance with Iran. It's what he's wanted. It's what he sought. It's what he's doing. Basically, the Iranians know that Obama will do anything they ask him to do. He threatens to bomb Syria. They say no. He changes his mind. No, we're not going to bomb Syria. He's, his.
Okay, so this is so important because I think you're right, and because he went right after election, he went to Cairo, correct?
Right.
So people thought his great overture is to the Muslim world, and while that's true, he has a favorite, as it were, and it is Iran.
Correct.
See, this is why it's so important, this discussion, and it is clearly the case, and so. What would you say, because we don't have all that much time left, what would you say if I got you to speak to all 100 U.S. senators? Make your case.
Yes. It's the most baffling thing I've ever seen, because I really can't explain it, and I keep looking for the explanation. I can't find it. I would say to them, look, Iran is arguably our most severe and dangerous enemy in the world. This president is pursuing an alliance with that enemy, and it's an enemy that never backs off and never says, yes, we'll talk to you, yes, we'll make deals with you, yes, we'll be nice to you. No, they keep on saying death to America, and they keep on killing Americans. Why did he get so angry the other day when a journalist asked him about the hostages? Because that's a clear case where Iran is taking Americans and throwing them in these awful prisons and torturing them. And the journalist said, well, why are we content to let that stand? Why, in the course of making this arrangement with the Iranians, did we not insist that our hostages be released? And he blew up. He was furious. He said, what are you accusing me of? Well, the answer is that we're accusing you of being pro-Iranian, which is inexplicable and dangerous and, can use very strong words to describe this attitude.
Are you aware that the greatest influence in his presidency, Valerie Jarrett, was born in Iran?
Oh, yeah. She lived, 5 or 6 years there.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that plays any role?
Well, she's very important, and she has been an intermediary between him and Iranians and Arab leaders. She has told Arab leaders that she's in charge of the Iran dossier, and she's conducting Iran policy. So, yes, I think it's very important. I think she is very important, and I've been trying through Freedom of Information requests and lawsuits and so forth to get some kind of record of her travel schedule, and I can't get it. And I keep asking people in Congress to demand it, and they say they can't get it. And I've talked to Judicial Watch, which does great work on the subject, and they have tried to get it, and they can't get it. So the whole thing is very, very secret. and it's very hard to get details on it. But obviously, you're quite right. She's terribly important.
Wow. Well, a lot has been clarified. What do you think? How do you think the vote will go?
I really don't know. I have very little confidence in Congress on these matters because, look, Dennis, the fact is, if they reject this, Obama's running around saying if you reject this, the only alternative is war, which is a bad joke because there is war. War is on. They're attacking us all the time. They're killing Americans all the time.
It's a bad joke for another reason. It makes war more likely. The stronger Iran is, the more bellicose it'll be.
Yes, and it also makes serious American policy, namely supporting insurrection against this regime inside Iran, much more urgent.
Which you, sir, have always called for from the beginning. Michael Ledeen, you are one of the clearest voices in our country. It's great to talk to you.
Thank you, Dennis. My pleasure entirely.